Morning. Today we will hear about the project by the Institute for Urban and Regional Infrastructure Finance at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs here at the University of Minnesota. The project is a small town infrastructure survey in southeast Minnesota, where they surveyed 62 communities in 2025. Today's presenters are Frank Dauma, the Director of State and Local Policy and Outreach for the Institute of Urban and Regional Infrastructure Finance at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, and a research scholar at the Center for Transportation Studies. And also Camila Fonseca Sarmiento, Director of Fiscal Research at the Institute for Urban and Regional Infrastructure Finance at Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota as well. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you all for attending, and hope this is going to be of interest. This is a project that, I'll get into in the slides, is part of the Empowering Small Minnesota Communities effort. The research team that we have, as Guillermo noted, is Camilla and myself from the Institute for Urban and Regional Infrastructure Finance. We also worked with Kathy Quick, who was her faculty home at the Humphrey, but also part of University of Minnesota Extension. And Andy Sutton from University of Minnesota Extension, and Paulina Vergara is a current student at the University of Minnesota in the GIS department, and you'll see that expertise come through in several maps that we'll be presenting as part of the presentation today. The champions for this project who brought it to the folks at Empowering Small Minnesota Communities were Dave Schmidt from the Community Economic Development Association, and Bruce McHenry, who has been in a number of different roles, including on the advisory board for Andy's board down in southeast Minnesota. And they were integral to shaping and bringing this research together. So it was entirely a team effort, and you just end up with me as the one who's doing the presentation. The background of this research then is Dave had as part of his area with CETA was the city of Winnebago in southeast Minnesota. And our objective was to develop and distribute a survey that we hoped would have returns from up to 50 communities in southeast Minnesota that had populations of up to 2,000 people. We wanted to learn about multiple types of infrastructure, broadly defined, including social, economic, and physical types of infrastructure, and to identify the strengths and weaknesses across the region as identified by the respondents to the survey. And then do this part, which is distributing the information that we learned. Also, the tools that we used. This survey is available, as well as the maps and some of the analytical tools that, in the interest of time, we won't go into the detail for that now, but they are available. And for those who are interested at the end, you can feel free to get in touch with me or Camilla, and we'll be happy to share those with you. So the objectives here, as I mentioned, when the city of Winnebago first presented the idea, was to learn about the gaps in the types of infrastructure. What are the existing resources? Where are there opportunities for improvement? Where are there opportunities where there are strengths already, and they could support cities where there's other interests? What are the comparative advantages throughout the region and within the region? And we wanted to look at some focus areas and opportunities for collaboration so that these cities, which given their population don't necessarily have the resources to do everything they might want. So if they could work with each other, they might have some opportunities to leverage the strengths of other cities. And to begin a conversation with stakeholders and develop ideas and next steps for investments and improvement quality of life throughout the region. Now, I mentioned this study is part of the Empowering Small Minnesota's Communities project. This is a product of the Minnesota legislature. which was designed to connect small Minnesota communities with the University of Minnesota, where the resources of the university could act to support small communities and support of their goals, and support development of projects that could bring increased competitiveness for cities, small communities throughout the state. It's a partnership between the design school at the University of Minnesota, the University of Minnesota Extension, the Humphrey School, and the Center for Transportation Studies. The method of our work then was we developed this survey. We identified 52 communities that fell within our geographic criteria, as well as the population of 500 to 2,000 people, as measured by the 2000 census. And we put together this survey that covered 17 different categories, including several types of infrastructure, more physical or social, education, transportation, housing, telecommunications, but also looking at a number of different amenities. And we'll talk about the key areas that we learned about as I continue to move through here. As we mentioned, the survey was distributed to 52 communities. It was through Qualtrics, an online survey. We ended up with 36 responses, which in the general world of survey responses, 69.2% is something we're pretty happy with. The respondents were mostly city administrators. We did have a few responses from city engineers or others who might be a little bit closer to dealing with infrastructure each day, and a couple of elected officials. This allowed us to do both quantitative and spatial analysis. And indeed, for those who have an interest and just want a copy of the slides, the mapping tool that we have is available through a link right here on the slides. And as you can see here on the slide that we show the region and the little city halls that are there represent the communities that responded. We also identified what we call reference cities. These are larger cities throughout the region. We've identified a ton of them, and their importance will come out as I continue going forward here. And as we looked at the results, the cities kind of grouped themselves into four different population categories. The smallest being between 500 and 750 in population. Next up is up to 1,000, then 1,000 to 1,500, and 1,500 to 2,000 completed those groupings. As I showed in the earlier map, we can see the size and the location of the cities that responded, and now we've also added the blue stars here are those reference cities. And you can see that kind of the way those reference cities are distributed throughout the region. We had an idea that we wanted to look at what is the importance of those larger cities to the ability for people who live in these smaller communities to get what they need to get things done and to contribute to their quality of life. So looking at those reference cities that we have, 80% of the respondents were within 25 miles of those cities. It was notable that two of the smallest population cities and one in the small medium category were over 25 miles from those cities. So that means it's a fairly significant trip to get to those areas. But otherwise, just about all of the cities were all of the respondent communities were within a relatively short drive of the major cities if driving is available to the person in question. Now to get to the results, hopefully I've got you excited enough with a number of hints to this point. We found there are many, many good things. We also found some areas that could use some attention. So you can see the glass is half full or half empty. Caveat here is that we're just reporting the results that we received. We're not the experts of Southeast Minnesota. That's why, at the end of the presentation, I'll talk about how we went out and talked with the respondents and other stakeholders throughout the region. But the interpretations are based upon what we picked up from this snapshot in time. And we're always looking for more thoughts and reactions about what we found. First of all, it probably occurred to several folks that are attending as well as us is just, how has the population changed? Are there any trends in this case? First, looking at just in the past 25 years, if the size of the city had any relationship to population change. We did see some difference here. The smaller cities were more likely to have seen a slight decrease in population, the larger cities more likely to increase. Um, we left it to the respondent to decide what was a significant increase versus a slight increase, but notably, none of the cities indicated that they had a significant decrease in just the last 25 years. I'll also note that it was kind of a coin flip in terms of decrease or increase. So it was 50% increase, 50% reported a decrease. Now, looking further back to 1970, and this starts to incorporate some pretty significant changes in lifestyle, in government agricultural policy, and a number of other things. We do see that there are a couple cities reported a significant decrease in the last 50, 55 years. And the large cities, again, were a little bit more likely to show that increase. But actually, despite those more significant changes on the more macro scale throughout the region, regardless of the size of the city, since 1970, we were more likely than not to see an increase in population. Geographically, there were some trends that were notable. First of all, is that the cities that in that 50% that reported a decrease, they were largely gathered in the southern part of the region. That is to say, as you get further away from the Twin Cities, the much more likely to find cities reporting that they were losing population. Not the case for all of the cities, but much more likely in the south. Again, it was only a slight population decline that was reported. To look a little further back then, however, to 1970, we see that it's more concentrated. Interestingly enough, the city of Claremont reported that even though it's not in that southern tier, it reported a loss in both time periods. And we see a concentration within parts of that southern tier for where cities lost population, but we also see close by cities that reported significant increases to all of these areas. So this is more of a descriptor. We don't really see a significant change in or trend just from the population changes, but it gave us an idea of what we were looking at. And so then we looked to the amenities. We mentioned that we asked about several of them, and they grouped into these categories that we see here. And just looking at the cities that reported whether they had a percentage of those amenities within their city limits, we saw that food access and public safety, police departments, volunteer fire departments, paramedics, all were pretty prevalent within the city limits. However, there seems to be some consolidation in government and institutional civic institutions, as well as recreation, culture, and tourism, which, as you may suspect if you know the region, is also somewhat geographically based with much more diverse geography and tourist opportunities in the southeast part of the southeast region. And so to look at it, to add one more layer of analysis then is, well, is there a trend across maybe the change in population or the size of the city? And when we look at percentage of amenities within the city limits, as you might expect, the smaller cities have fewer amenities, and that came through pretty loud and clear. This is not to say that their quality of life is lower, but we did just notice this trend. But looking at whether this had an impact on population change, we see that there's a fairly equal distribution across the change in population of these cities. So even if they had a lot of amenities or did not, that did not seem to have an impact on population change since 2020, or excuse me, since 2000. To the point even of Preston, a city that reported a loss in population, had the highest percentage of amenities of any that we were reporting. Now, this is where we go back to the reference cities, because these cities, a majority of them, 80%, were within 25 miles, quite a large percentage within 10 miles of these reference cities. And so if we look at the question of the percentage of the amenities we asked about that are present within the city limits or within 10 miles of the responding community, we find a lot more green. In many cases, even recreation, cultural, and tourism opportunities are reported within 10 miles. So that could be either in another small community or in one of these larger reference cities. And now that we look at that opportunity to go beyond the city limits, we see that there is less of a grouping, not nearly as pronounced, and based upon population size and the amenities that are available. Again, the smallest cities in the category, Brownsville and Glenville, have over 90% of the amenities available within 10 miles. On the other side, Madison Lake, one of the larger cities, also reported that. We see that, again, there is a little bit of a trend toward smaller cities having fewer amenities, but not nearly as stark as we're just limiting to within the city limits. And if we look by population change, again, there does not seem to be a relationship between population change and the availability of amenities. So this is starting to tell us that it's not because of a low quality of life that people were leaving the cities or coming in for a high quality of life in terms of at least access to these amenities. And so, as we said, it's kind of a half full, half empty situation, depending on your perception. But we're not dealing with a large exodus or a lack of opportunity within the region overall. So, stepping back then and taking our 70 some slides of results that we presented when we went out and talked to the stakeholders down to something that we can put into a breakfast bite-sized presentation. I'm going to just summarize kind of what we learned. On the positive side, while we did see that there was populations loss grouped in the southern part of the region, there were relatively few areas of concern, at least when it came to population change. In looking at broadband access and single-family housing throughout the region, those were reported as being in very good shape. Lewiston and Stockton in particular stood out as cities that were very optimistic about the quality of their infrastructure. And as we noted in the slides, Preston, Rushford, Spring Grove have a large quantity of the amenities available very nearby within city limits or within 10 miles. On the other hand, some things that we noted that caught our attention as changes that may not be quite so positive. Traditional assets, at least to a Gen X person like me, radio stations, a local radio station, almost none of the cities had those. Almost none reported bookstores or pharmacies. Even throughout the region, only 2 pharmacies were noted. several cities noted that they felt they needed more investment in some types of infrastructure. Health and social came up. We heard quite a bit actually about water infrastructure as well. And from the housing perspective, while single family housing was reported to be positive, multifamily housing, particularly apartments and other more low income opportunities, were felt to be not as good as they could be, and opportunities for additional opportunities for investment. Local streets were felt to be not as good condition as county or state highways, and so these localities would have appreciate opportunities to improve those as well. Um, Looking then more specifically at the types of infrastructure, public education was felt to be good. Broadband coverage has become much better within just the 5 years, to the point that cell coverage was maybe the only area that more investment might be needed. But again, radio stations, print newspapers, and so forth, not nearly as ubiquitous as I might have expected when I was growing up back in those the beginning of our time frame in the 1970s. Um, Then, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned, we did outreach to the stakeholders and other interested folks. We had 5 in-person events, and then in November put together a webinar that engaged another 100 participants. And what we heard from them after we went through all of our slides is one, there was definite interest in need for awareness of the community investments and having communication about that. Opportunities for strengthening grant applications. How could other resources be leveraged from CETA, from the university, from other cities to be able to secure funds to address those areas of need? To develop ideas for new projects, and encourage collaboration among these small communities on a broad range of economic opportunities, which can go definitely beyond just redeveloping storefronts. And opportunities for further data collection. What are areas of existing plans for upgrades? We didn't ask, what are the plans right now? Where are there to get some quantitative information? Come back in a few years, see what's changed, and expand the survey to areas to cities with larger populations, and see if compare those responses. So I started to hurry a little bit there because we always get great Q&A, and so I now will turn this over. I can add Camilla's or Camilla, if she just wants to put that into the chat, her contact information as well. And again, we've got links both to the project page and to the webinar that we held in November. If you would like the more detailed presentation, those are available. And we can also share more information about the mapping tool and the raw data that we have as well. And so I'll stop talking and turn it over to questions at this point.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. There are a few questions, but before that, I did want to tell people that the links and contact information of the presentation will be made available in a follow-up email for those who registered for this webinar. You can. I don't know if you want to answer the questions that we have in the Q&A directly, or you want me to ask the questions to you and you answer.
I think it's helpful if you wanted to just read the questions that you'd like us to answer. That way, folks who may not have access to the Q&A or who are trying to figure out which question is being asked, if you just want to go ahead and do the asking, then we can respond.
Perfect. There was a question, and there is some follow-up to these questions. There was a question about the size of the towns that were selected, and I feel that it was answered sufficiently in detail, but I'll just repeat the answer that the threshold was decided by the project champions that wanted to see patterns in very small cities. In the engagement event, we heard interest from communities to survey cities with larger populations. The same person asked a follow-up question that said, for example, here in Houston County, La Crosse is the bigger city, that the Spring Grove and Houston communities likely go for shopping and work opportunities rather than Winona. So for those of you who are, well, Winona is one of the large towns on the Minnesota side, but just across the river is La Crosse that also attracts people to shopping and to access other amenities. Is there anything else you want to add about that movement to those different large towns in that area?
I'll acknowledge that we did list La Crosse as one of the cities. Just a limitation of our mapping is that we had a nice little map of southeast Minnesota, so we didn't get a La Crosse star put on there. We could change that, but we did acknowledge there are some cities both in Wisconsin and Iowa that could be closer to some of these cities. And definitely recognize that people in the cities that responded could go to those communities for additional amenities.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, similarly, for some of the towns, at least in a different project that I'm working on, Rochester is also an important center of activity for many of these communities. Second question is, what are the lessons learned from the methodology or the results that are especially valuable for other small towns in Minnesota and elsewhere to be aware of?
I think kind of the first thing is that we kind of hope this would be a tool that others might want to deploy in other regions because, as again we found here, there were a number of pieces of information that were very, I don't want to say idiosyncratic, but tied closely to the community. And so just trying to draw a lesson from Southeast Minnesota to apply in other parts of the state might be somewhat tricky at this point. Although it was interesting to hear more information about or learn some of the information about the difference in, say, transportation amenities and the quality of those, that the local streets were seen to be getting less investment. Camilla, I don't know if you saw other sorts of lessons that would apply more broadly.
No, I think I will echo what you just say. It was mostly to see like what are the amenities and the infrastructure, like the current state of the infrastructure in these small cities. So typically, like research doesn't focus on these very small cities. So that was kind of the aim of this survey. It was just looking into very small communities that have that. And also kind of what we learn is it's kind of that intersection with like bigger cities. And like these cities do not work in a vacuum. They work as a system. So it was very interesting to see how communities were learning from the findings and trying to say like, well, if we are having the same problem, is let's say in terms of housing, can we bring developers into the area? What is it that we need to do to bring some of them into kind of these small cities? So I think that was
Thank
one
you.
of those.
I think we are running to the end of our presentation. I want to thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Frank and Camila, for presenting today. I want to invite you for the next Breakfast Bites, which will be on May 20th. And the title of that program will be Where You Live Matters, Health in Rural America. Dr. Clara Bousset from the School of Public Health will present about health issues facing rural communities in the United States. And she will talk about the work that she and her colleagues do as part of the Rural Health Research Center. Please join us then. Also keep in mind you will receive a follow-up email, which will have a survey to regarding this presentation and additional presentation of future events to follow. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Camila. And have a great day.